everybody, give you a second thesaurus to join me. It's been a while. I had to pull back my energy so I could climb the peak of a mountain that I have been working at and chipping away at for years. So that's how I can get. That commitment, that focus, that knowing that there's going to be sacrifices involved, that can be a barrier to doing some things, requiring a lot of effort. So I was able to put that in there, and that effort in, and really push through those obstacles and rejoin the living. But yeah, it can take sacrifice doing hard things. Anyway, Neptune goes direct tomorrow, or stations, not exactly direct. The confusion starts to lift. Have you felt that even the last week? And Saturn going direct as well, having been direct here for a little bit. Two of them finally getting out of those last degrees of Pisces. It is this getting our head above water feeling, living into a better, less confusing, disillusioning future in some ways, because we have a period of time with Neptune going through Aries where we have the rebuilding. The very beginning of a process is in Aries. So we have this like leveling of institutions and old ways of being. And because we have this combination of Saturn, which is institutions, blah, 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 the things that we rely on. And then Neptune, which is the washing away, the erasure of something. So better foundational structures of institutions, the things that we rely on, the backbone of society, our own expectation of normalcy, and distribution of goods and services. It's all the boring stuff of Saturn. There's all that beginning here. So personally, if you have planets around between 25 degrees, 29 degrees in Pisces, and the very early degrees in Aries, this is where personally it impacts you the most, where personally you can feel, not just socially and collectively. This won't be so much that experience. It will be something that you directly feel like you are waking up from some kind of ego nightmare or nightmare of self, because there is this like willingness to do hard things, Saturn stuff, willing to grow the hell up. It's so much a matter which word you use now, because things change, don't they? It's that process of taking better, more complete responsibility for your life that allows you to wake up from a way that we have formerly thought ourselves up. The process of inventing ourselves through what we've been through, and using that as the ball of experience that we reference ourselves as. So there's this realization that, wait, who I've always been does not have to be who I am going to be. It's a square kind of moment. That, wait, I can reinvent myself, and I can do it instantaneously if I don't automatically apply what has been in the past to the present moment, and then create a future moment out of that. So if we have more of a conscious intention when it comes to being in the present, so there isn't that memory, those impressions, what has been, that we decide must be, recycling of things. That's where we can feel like we can finally come out of some nightmares of self and think ourselves up differently. That takes a lot of bravery, and it takes a lot of willingness to, it's a combination really of forgiveness, humility, and dealing with resentment and our idea of payback or reparation or restitution or getting the eye for an eye concept, getting even. That's what it is. Our need to extract something or to get something or to get back in such a way where we level or even the scales. If we're caught up in that, we're not seeing something clearly. And that does not mean that justice isn't a thing. That's a different conversation. But when we are not changing or transforming or growing or doing better or evolving because we're hanging back for that payback, we're trying to control. We're not giving that over to the cycles. We're not letting karma, the natural consequences of things, do the work for us. And so we lose a lot of energy. And there's a process of exhaustion that we go through when we aren't moving towards a better, more evolved version of ourselves because we trust life. We trust the cycles. We trust having to control, so we know and we use our own energy and our fixation and our focus to accomplish that thing, to get back, to extract, to even the score. We're staying on that same level, in that same frequency as that previous thing, that experience, situation, person, condition that we don't have to exist at. And so it's a way our identity, the way that we think ourselves up, that continuous process of keeping our ego safe for the ways that we're out of alignment, or how we're different than what we want to believe or think about ourselves. It is how we soothe ourselves. The ego is a very helpful thing. It's a very necessary thing. But when it keeps you from evolving into a better, more loving, more mature, more, evolved, higher process, being, when it keeps you from being better, that is an immature folding in on ourselves, where we are keeping our own self from because we want to keep ourselves safe, we're keeping ourselves from maturing and growing. And then blaming external sources, because that's what has to happen if we're going to stay in that more infantile state, which in some ways we have to stay in until we have aspects of ourselves that have come online or matured or developed enough muscle or practice where we can extricate ourselves or move on, elevate. So we've been going through that process, all of us, and some of us more personally, that tearing, well, we have some parts of ourselves that are ready to go, some parts of ourselves that are ready to grow, but other parts of ourselves that are not ready to support that conscious intention or need. And so there's like a shearing effect that you get with that. While you are starting to practice these new ways of being or choices or, very early habitual emotional patterns that we are you're just growing into. And when we apply ourselves because we want something and we're doing the hard work of following through with hard choices and developing processes, aspects of ourselves, ways of being, characteristics that allow us to have the kind of hopes and dreams and better life and experience and relationships that we want. So there's a really intense finishing process when it comes to the individuation. Or, I didn't say that correctly. It wasn't very poetic. Finishing era when it comes to the individuation process. The process of growing up, achieving self-realization, understanding what the hell you're doing and how you look to others and what you're causing, and taking responsibility for how we are. That's very much a square. That's what Saturn is. It represents that final square, that final test, that closing square. And Saturn is right now at 25 degrees Pisces. Neptune at 29 degrees. And so it's the last phase of the individuation process, the maturing process. And when we come to the end of that, it's a big relief. The reason that we don't do that is because there's an assumption of exhaustion or, hard work, and that is all true. But that's not the ending point. That's what we go through in the process of assuming better and more complete responsibility for the course of our life, what we get out of life, what the results are, what our experience is. Once we go through the motions of development, we've created a new normal for ourselves, and that is where we get to rest. We get to have that feeling of success and reward and bask in that for a while. So if we understand that doing hard things or developing parts of ourselves that need to be in tune with other parts of ourselves. So we have the muscle and the strength and the character and the focus to do what needs to be done in order to get our ideals. That's Pisces stuff, that's Neptune stuff, that's our dreams. That's the higher, the highest experience of what we can get. That's unconditional love. That is the tippy top of what it is that we would like to have an experience. If all options are on the table, we can have some of that in our life. We can have heaven on earth. But it is through the process of Saturn. This is what a lot of religious people and spiritualists miss or purposely do not focus on, because this doesn't really garner a lot of followers. You have to earn it yourself. And having that really legitimate process of heaven really descending, or having some of the how we envision our life, what we could have if everything is on the table, we ground that can't be given to you from an external circumstance or source. Nobody can bless you with that. Nobody can take your sins away. You have to bear the responsibility for who you are, and then we commit ourselves. We reconcile ourselves to being the kind of person that can bring the highest and best version of our reality into reality. It's not just a pie in the sky life. Because Neptune is the beginning and the end, really the formation of is the imagination, the formation of that daydream. As we go through this process of Aries and back to Pisces, we can ground that daydream into reality. Now, that doesn't mean that if we're daydreaming about riding a hippopotamus through the sky with a unicorn horn, and it does not mean that what isn't meaningful. See, that's what we filter through. We don't actually ground what isn't meaningful. That's what we find out in that process. We ground our Neptunian, the healthy side of Neptune. That's what it is. That's what we find. We go through, piercing through layers of the appearance of things, illusion. And then we find what we really, truly want to manifest and bring into reality. Because that old adage, or that saying, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. We learn the wisdom in that. And particularly right now, collectively and personally, it's really never been more clear what the consequences are. Or you could also look at it like the cycle of fuck around and find out. When we have Neptune or Pisces, we come to that very end stage. This is where we have the final impact or consequences of things, the final folly, the curtain that finally comes up, or we finally see through. That's why it's where we wake up from a nightmare, personally and collectively, that has been going on, well, for the entire last cycle, really, of Neptune. And in the larger sense, much longer than that, because we haven't seen Saturn and Neptune together in those first degrees of Aries in a long time. And astrology teaches us how to interpret cycles within cycles. So there's a lot of people that this month, we're coming out of a brain fog. We're coming out of a confusion. We're coming out of a nightmare. We're coming out of an exhaustion, because the last months, while Saturn and Neptune were retrograde through these very last degrees, that was a great descending exhaustion and a feeling of defeat and of depression. That, because everything is a yin and a yang, everything is day and night, the black and white, the duality of life. When we have that really dark balsamic period, that leads to a new cycle, which we are going into now as Saturn and Neptune go direct, and they get into those very first degrees of Aries. That's when we have more of a wide-eyed, oh my God, what the hell kind of thing. And we can have those moments when we have a period of time where we can reflect on what has happened or what has occurred and have a better interpretation of, we have more clarity. Hindsight is 2020, right? And so that's what we look at really into January and February, as Saturn and Neptune go into those very first degrees in Aries. We're looking back on the personal and collective nightmare, delusion, how we pull the wool over our own eyes, disappointment, Pisces stuff. We're looking back and getting more of an idea of what happened there. And really the crunch period that we're looking at is the last 3 years or so that Saturn has been going through Pisces, the 14-year period that Neptune has been going through Pisces. And what has happened during that 14-year cycle, 3-year cycle? And how do we more clearly understand and interpret it now that we have some space, some capacity for reflection, some time has gone by, and we have a radically different idea? Because it's one of those moments where we see what we have brought into being. That collective realization of, whoa, I got what I wished for. Be careful what you wish for. Like that moment when I was a child and I wished for a snake. And I was so loud about it. I made sure everybody knew. I wanted a snake for my birthday. And my grandfather showed up with a fake snake and threw it at me. And it freaked me out so bad. I was traumatized. I threw that thing away from me and wanted nothing to do with it. He was laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. I definitely found out that it wasn't even real. Can you imagine if it was a real thing? It's those moments where we realize, I better be careful what I wish for, because if I don't know myself well enough, or if I don't understand the reality of what it is I'm wishing for, and especially if both of those things are going on, there's going to be a problem. So there's an ironing out of the collective, capacity for having the wool pulled over our eyes, doing it to ourselves, in our personal lives, in our collective lives. And we have to forgive ourselves, particularly if this has been involved, either Saturn or Neptune, in your natal chart. We're going to have some moments where we realize, I can't believe I put myself in that position. I can't believe I wanted that. I can't believe I wished for that. What was I thinking? And that's easy to say when you've grown, or when you're a better version of yourself. When you have more information, it's very easy to beat yourself up because you did not know then what you know now. Because if you did, you wouldn't have done that. But doing that led to who you are now. It was a necessary step in the process of individuating, becoming that better, more mature, self-respecting version of ourselves. That the process of first house through 12th house always takes us through. So it's going to feel good this week. It's going to feel really good to have that exhale and that clarity come in that can finally be the final letting go of dreams, addictions, fascinations, illusions that we had been energetically involved in, or had been part of our process of thinking ourselves up. It feels it feels good to come out of that karmic frame of reference. So we're going to feel restored over the next months, and particularly if you've been on the divine feminine journey, if you've been going through that process of the path of becoming through the path of the high priestess or the high priest. It's a final finishing when it comes to wholeness, individuation, letting go of the old versions of ourselves that we've been clinging to, hoping that they externally would change. We see the results of our internal changes, and how when we change internally, what shows up for us externally necessarily reflects that. So many, many beautiful things to come here in the next weeks. This has been a very, very hard ending for the world, and has felt just completely confusing and disorienting, because it's a collective awareness that is building here as we go into a new age of shared experience. Neptune seeks to unfold more and more people into the collective shared experience over the course of time. So Uranus has this global effect. Neptune is bigger than that even. It's what connects everybody in a ultimately regenerative, helpful, because we're always going towards the best side of Neptune. We don't always get there. Usually we experience a lot of failure with Neptune. But when we do have that process of melting, sharing, accepting that everything is connected, and living in a way that respects that and allows for that, that is a non-egocentric way to be. And Neptune is a transpersonal, the most transpersonal energy archetype that we deal with, that is. So let me take a look at some questions here. Got a little carried away. Hey, MCAT. I didn't have any latest because I've been disappeared here for a while. I am very, very hit and miss when it comes to social media because it's not natural to me. I have to put energy into it because I don't like it. I like you guys, but I don't like everything involved in the regularity of advertising myself. When I have things to say, I show up. Oh, Victoria, your Saturn is at 28 degrees in Pisces. Yeah, you are having that conjunction of Saturn to Saturn. So that personal experience of feeling that society just doesn't work anymore, that is something that's very much unfolded into you being a part of the process of creating a new type of society or collective experience. Because humans are very much, like an ant colony. If you want to understand humans, study ants. It is a very miraculous thing that such little creatures can do such amazing things, such constructive things. And humans are very much the same way. We all have our piece. We all have our little job to do. We could see that in the North Node. And it is important. Our calling, our piece, our block, or look at it like a big puzzle. All the pieces have to be there. If you think your piece isn't important, and so you just discard your piece, you forget about it, or you let your cat eat it, and then we get to the end and that piece is missing, that's not working. That's frustrating. That is like all the other pieces looking at it like, what? This is incredibly important. And we realize that in the process of individuation, that we do have an importance. We do have meaning. We have gravity here. We hold weight. That is that process of justifying ourselves, believing in ourselves, getting to the peak of the Capricorn mountain, that's Saturn in that last closing square. And really getting that we do matter. So I think that's a big part of your particular process right now, my dear, because you're having that direct conjunction, is realizing that, hey, if I want things to be different, I really need to do my own particular part for that. and take responsibility for what I can do in my own little corner of the universe. Alice, that's a good quote you got there. Difficult, not quote, but idea, comment. Difficult aspects by transit and placement require a lot of denying trust. Yeah, yeah, the skepticism that comes in, the lack of belief in outcomes. We really have to wrestle with that, those difficult aspects, because that tends to produce those negative results. The idea that we come into the world with. Sometimes people don't hand it back to us. Sometimes people don't play the karma game. Other times I think it's really good if somebody does show us exactly what and how we are, especially if it's a conjunction we got going on. But most of the time, it's best to not toss the karma ball back, because that allows people to see what they are, especially when they can't engage you, especially people with a lot of oppositions. They're very much trying to engage you in their idea about you and themselves and the world. And when we don't participate in that, it's shattering. And we have to allow people to not, you have to become comfortable with upsetting people and having people not like us also, when we come into those places of neutrality or non-reactivity. Alice, yes, you could use my story to represent Saturn. Yeah. Um, so Agnes, you are waking up. It'll take a few months of you, probably trying, regaining yourself and your energy there. Take a lot of salt baths. Oh my goodness. Our Wendy, you know who you are. Whoa. You have had Saturn and Neptune sitting on your 29-degree Pisces descendant. My sympathies to you. That is a big deal in terms of having a broad experience of karma, related to how we are within relationship and who we are in relationship with. That I went through that a while ago. I can sympathize. Oh, of course you did. Contracted long COVID while these planets are transiting the 6th. That is archetypally correct. I'm glad that that finally wrapped up. Um, I'll have to mention that in transits class. My students would be interested to hear a little bit of perfect transiting information there. Oh, MCAT. Ant Farm seemed so cruel. Yeah, they generally don't do well. We do tend to experience a lot of colony collapse when we try to enclose that kind of creativity. So I think it is best to leave it natural. There's some animals and entities that just don't do well in captivity. and others that absolutely love it, like my cat over there, who's not bothering us today because I put a heated blanket that's for animals. It's very low voltage, safe. Put it in her bed, and she needed it for like 20 or 30 minutes before she went to sleep. And I haven't heard from her since. She's been motionless. So, very good example of an animal that wants to be in captivity. In fact, when she goes outside, she doesn't leave the yard. She stays so close to the house because she is a comfort cat. Sarah transiting Neptune, also showing a sextile to your natal sun. Not the worst aspect to have. Sometimes we can have aspects from Neptune where we get most of the good stuff. We don't get the disillusion, the confusion, the heartbreak, the exhaustion, sometimes the STD or the ghosting that we never saw coming. And we don't necessarily get that with the trine or the sextile. You have to look at everything that's going on in the natal chart, but usually with those kinds of transits, we get overwhelmingly positive outcomes or conditions, and then that's tested the next time that we have the difficult transits. So the sextile from Sun to Neptune can actually put us in contact with very, very helpful people that have our best interest in mind. We don't experience the self created, we don't get involved with the wrong characters. That's what it is. We draw to us people that actually do have the capacity for cooperative solutions. The bits and pieces that we need, because we have the details with a sextile. So, yeah, it's not so like awesome like with the square where we seem to see everything we've ever wanted to see and then we just go off a cliff. We'll see like legitimate pieces or get legitimate pieces of things that have more substance with the sextile. Just looking through a few comments here, guys. Oh, somebody's got a square of Neptune and Saturn. Squaring natal Venus. And Neptune and Saturn are going through the 7th. So that is definitely going to be something that shows up in the context of relationship, illusions about partners, others. It is gonna straighten up the shadow side of the chart. We know what we are. There's conscious intention with the ascendant, but how we are in relationship is described by the descendant, how others experience us. So there's a long process of Neptune going through the 7th house that can take a while of us working through some of our most self-defeating patterns, choices, ways of being that show up in the context of relationship. Oh, Alice, you are just full of interesting things today. I love this. Long transits like these make an astrologer wonder why this specific generation is meant to experience this collectively. A reckoning, a renaissance, because everything is a cycle and they're meant to experience because they are the young seed people of the age of Aquarius. And so civilization has these rise and falls, these building and disintegration processes. And there has never been one civilization or one country that has held the power or ruled or been the apex forever. So everything is a cycle. And because we had the big boys, the big planets transiting through Capricorn, that was at that same time that we had Pluto and Uranus square, the heralding of the total rebuilding of our idea of what is the backbone of our human experience, normalcy, what is institutionalized, our idea of order. And so it is this generation that through going through this disillusionment, this disorder, they have a process to see what are the results of these long-term cycles. What are the results of materialism, the types of laws and expectations and ideas of normalcy and order that we've had? What does it all come to? And then not too long ago, we had the people now in their 30s who are coming into the very beginnings of political power and creation of law and institutions. They have that Uranus-Neptune conjunction in their natal charts, which doesn't come around very often. This heralds in the new type of industrial age. And in this case, it is the age of technology. We had the age of machines, the last cycle, the Industrial Revolution. Now we have the technology revolution. And that happening in the sign of Capricorn too, that particular conjunction, the birth of new dreams, new systems, new ways of including more into the collective melting and system. So them coming into power with this buttload of idealism and visionary abilities, everything is the stage is being set here for them to be open enough, flexible enough, teachable enough to be able to ground a very new and somewhat extraordinary blendings of liberal or conservative past and future energies. Okay. This is a good question, kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, but it's interesting. Have I ever seen a couple with Mars square Uranus in the composite last? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That isn't always a deal breaker. If you do have more inner planets that are square to Saturn, which you frequently will, if you have a Mars, Saturn, Uranus, I'm sorry, Uranus square, other planets, inner planets square to Uranus, that will up the chances of running into um, problems when it comes to shared activities, differences in values. Mars Uranus squares in composite charts does mean that we can react to each other rebelliously. We don't automatically work together when it comes to what we're going to individually, energetically pursue. And so we won't share a lot of the same rhythms with that particular square. And for some people, it will become a source of ongoing conflict. Not for everybody. You have to look at what's coming off of it. Do we have spokes, like other aspects, what I call escape valves, to other ways of being in the relationship that are harmonious or are working? Or is it more of a circuit of experiencing each other or a behavior that's like a closed circuit, or is only related to other difficult things? That will make a difference. And look at the natal charts. If we have one or two natal charts, especially two, that are naturally contrary or rebellious or think themselves up through a process of resistance or saying no, or seeing themselves as the outlier or as the lone wolf or the one that knows better because look at all of those minions over there doing collective things and I'm over here, I'm too smart for any of that. If we have that, one of those two attitudes going on there, that will increase the likelihood that we'll work directly against each other in the process of acquiring things, enjoying activities. Like one of us likes to bake pies and the other one likes to play golf. That can be an ongoing source of conflict with this square, if it is exhibiting that way with the other factors I'm talking about. But if we can accept that, okay, I love this person, that we got a lot of good things going on here, but we do not like to do a lot of the things the same. And in fact, the fact that he likes to golf so much, it impacts my budget, my baking budget. And the fact that I'm here, baking actually impacts him because he's a diabetic and I've got all these pies all over the place. But I'm going to learn how to adjust my attitude and my own behavior in order to bridge this gap or deal with this problem. But there is quite a lot of ego that has to be sublimated, and because we see the other person as like the issue when it comes to us not being able to have our personal course of choices or actions. And so we could be very reactive and even just willfully getting in each other's way of experiencing some things that individually we were just fine doing and experiencing before the other person came into our life. But now it's a problem. So you look at everything, but yeah, for some people that can be a very, very bothersome square to have, depending on, everything. Oh, Alice, once again, a little gem from you. The quiet contempt that breeds resentment. Yeah, I don't know about this square. It's not so much quiet contempt, but yes, it breeds resentment. Yeah, it does. Especially if we have two scorekeepers. If we don't, which you probably wouldn't have in the composite chart, if we weren't working through patterns of selfishness or give and take, because relationships, composite charts, they show up to teach us about ourselves. And when we are wrestling with healing, with trauma, with with karma, we tend to attract more difficult, oppositional, hurtful relationships and dynamics into our life. And you don't tend to see really heavy, plutonic, karmic aspects, the configurations in the charts of people that come together after they have done their individual healing. And people that do come into their healing, they do evolve, they do, come through to the other side and figure out who they are, negotiate their way through difficult relationships and difficult composite charts. Those aspects can be describing the best of what you can get. We'll be looking at that like, say like a like a Sun Pluto hard aspect, where we would normally look at that and be like, whoa, good luck with that one. After we've come through the other side, it's a strength now. Look at it like a healed hard aspect in your own natal chart. So I kind of went off on a tangent there. All right, guys, I have to wrap up. I am running out of battery. I've got a class coming up here. Tomorrow, I will be checking in with members only. Members only live, Ask Me Anything. So I'll remind you guys about that. And I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.